Does a flower truly understand the beauty it possesses? From the depths of its roots to its intricate edges.
Wretched yet precious, forced to look towards the upper crust as if it hasn't done enough to sum it up. This isn't about being a flower, this is about being one of us, here in the garden.
From the depths of its roots to its intricate edges.
Wretched yet precious, forced to look towards the upper crust as if it hasn't done enough to sum it up. This isn't about being a flower, this is about being one of us, here in the garden.
Life at the bottom.
From the depths of its roots to its intricate edges.
Wretched yet precious, forced.
Yet I can't tell why. I see no beauty in myself, but I admire the skies. I see the sun shining, hope that one day I do the same. That's why I grow a little more through the rain. See, I came from the dirt, maggots and dead bodies, to find my place in earth and hope that you care about me. I sense the snakes in the grass, but still I rise, hoping I keep on growing while searching these empty skies. Survive the coldest, the winters, all by myself in the blizzard. Nobody thought I'd be living, they want me in this position, but I stayed strong, determined to reach my full potential. So the irony, this ain't coincidental. See, when you truly know your worth, you make it work, and your roots just a reminder that you started from the dirt and the garden. Yeah. Here in the garden, straight through this shit. Yeah.
Hey, this is Jack.
So what you know about the drinks?
Hey, Steven, you know we're live, right, bud?
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best.
We're actually, so this is the special bloopers episode of Welcome to the Machine.
I'm into it.
Hey, Steve, let's just keep it rolling, bud. I think he muted himself.
Didn't hear what you said.
It's okay. We're live now, and we are having, this is episode number 19 of Welcome to the Machine. And we have our typical producer, Jeff Tucker, is on vacation. How dare that? Actually, Jeff's probably driving home right now from vacation. So we have our executive producer, Steve Safak, in the background, and he's going to do his best to keep this thing rolling. And today's guest is a personal branding expert and someone that has had a very, very fascinating story as to how she got to where she is today. And she also has a very unique, I don't know if I call it a hobby, Kate, or a fascination with quantum physics.
An amateur appreciation.
Amateur appreciation for quantum physics. So this is Kait LeDonne. Kate, thank you for joining us. And who knows where we're going to go here. We haven't, just like every show, it's been unscripted, and we have no idea what we're going to talk about, but we will try and keep it entertaining and just add massive amounts of value to our listeners. So, hey, Kate, welcome aboard.
Hey, John Newman. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So, as we usually get started, just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got there.
Sure. So I am Kait LeDonne. I am a brand strategist and personal brand strategist. Before in a nutshell way, I've had my business for 2.5 years. And before that, I was at a corporation managing their marketing department. And it was great. I was in lending, cut my teeth and learned a lot about an industry I didn't know a lot about before I got into it. And while in the process of working there, I really started working with local and small businesses because I saw where they could go and I saw the potential in their brands. And I just saw where there was gaps in between where I saw they could be and what they were doing and where they were. So I started helping companies with their brand strategy, with their marketing strategy, get super clear on their message so they could build scalable brand systems. And I wasn't even charging. And I just had this side passion. I didn't have cable TV. I would just go home and I would just consume and read and had blogs and and help these businesses. And after a while, I kind of realized, oh, the only difference between me and a guy that's making money is he's asking for it and I'm not. So I started charging, and to my surprise, people wanted to pay me, which was super cool. And then I had this bona fide like moonlighting business as a brand strategist while also running a corporate marketing department. And it's a lot, and it was a lot to keep up with. And I kind of came to this proverbial fork in the road moment where it was really a choice of, okay, do you want to stay and really, grow yourself within this company, or you need to go full into entrepreneurship to be able to grow the business and service the clients you had now. So I'll never forget, I went home on Memorial Day weekend. I finally sat down and read the book, The Alchemist, cover to cover. I shut the back page and was like, that's it. I'm doing it. Life is a journey, whatever, not whatever, but I'm going to commit. And ever since then, it's been insane and awesome. And also, as entrepreneurship is crushing at times, but the highest highs you can ever feel, and the trying times and the learning lessons. And it's been really great. And right now I'm also getting into personal branding on LinkedIn and developing an online course about that. So it's been fun to shift business models and expand products and services. So it's probably a lot, but that's probably the shorter version of how I got to where I am.
And is that something that you went to college? Like, did you go to college for marketing, or if you go back prior to, like, how did you get started in marketing and the lending business?
Yeah. So, the marketing thing, this was my goal going into college, right? So I modeled when I was younger, when I was in high school. And I went up to Manhattan. I was meeting with these agencies, and I was sitting there being told, what you should weigh, and like, don't even wax your eyebrows before you give us a call because you're the product. And I was looking at these guys on the other side of the table, and they all had law degrees and were making 20% of all of the work that we would go and do. So I would, starve myself, go shoot. And then they made 20%. And I was like, this is genius. I'm going to become a talent agent. So I went to school with every intention of doing like pre-law and then going law school, because that's what I thought you had to do to become a talent rep. And when I got into marketing, I took some sales classes, interestingly enough. And that's what started to pique my interest into marketing, because it was all about how to get into the hearts and minds of people and really, point them into the direction of great products and persuasion. And so I totally switched gears, and I ended up with a public relations and advertising degree. So yes, I went to school for it. No, it wasn't the intention, like many in college when I went into it. And then the lending thing actually happened because I saw an ad in Craigslist, and it was like, needs marketing help, like for, needs a marketing specialist to do direct mail campaigns and run the marketing. We're a business that's, I think at the time we were in 6 states. And I went in and I interviewed with the CEO and the HR person. And to my delight, they called me back. And I really just hit the ground running there. It was super, super fun. A lot of learning lessons. They were a fast growth company. They still are. They're really, really growing quite nicely. So you learn a lot in that environment. It was, I would say, almost like a business school education, but in the trenches and learning it.
And I imagine that through the modeling, I don't know what to call it, a phase that, or through that career path, you were on the other side of where you are now. So you were the product, and now you're teaching people how to become the product without the quote unquote the modeling agencies. Because I would imagine today, and I don't know much about modeling, but today, if I have a cool Instagram page, I don't really need a modeling agency anymore, do I?
It's so true. Like when you get to a level where you're working with big brands, like they're coming through the agencies, right? And I'm not going to say that exclusively for everything. And I wouldn't say I was in the industry long enough to be able to say if that's still the case. I'm not in touch with it as much anymore. But when you're going up for big, commercial contracts, even if you look at like Irina Shaykh's Instagram, she's going to have the name of her talent manager to get a hold of. Like, you're just dealing at that level of negotiation that you kind of need that, again, legal representation and protection. But yeah, man, I wish Instagram was a thing because I always had this passion for business and marketing. And you really are, you are a personal brand when you're a model. And that's something else I wish I would have just kind of known when I was younger, because when you are young and you go into these situations and they're literally looking at you and saying, your forehead's too big, you're a little too tall, you need to realize that they are actually just seeing you as a product, and they have a very specific idea of the persona they want in their ad and what they're trying to communicate. And they have creative directors that want a certain energy, and you can really tap into that in a way that is positioning yourself to get the job if you know and understand the marketing thought behind it. And also, you can take less offense to when they sit there and literally dissect you bit by bit, because it's just all in the knowledge of they're looking for a certain look, and either I am that or I'm not that, and either way it's fine because somebody will want that.
No, when you and I talked on the phone, we talked a lot about transparency and vulnerability. Do you believe that when you were in that the modeling path that you were allowed? It almost sounds like that's the opposite of, like, you can't be who you are because you have to be what someone else wants you to be. Is there? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, like, quite literally, modeling is like you're acting to a certain degree. Like, it's not just standing there. You have to. I did an earmuff. So you know the earmuffs, like 180s, they wrap around the back.
Oh, yeah.
Based company, right? So I got this job in college. It was, they didn't tell me what it was. My agent called me and she's like, hey, we got a job. It pays like blank grand for 4 hours of work. In college, I was like, what? Like, rich, just won the lotto. I will do it. Tell me where. So I get there. I think it's in like the middle of summer. They still don't tell me what the product is. And they're like, okay, like, look cold, but look happy. And I'm like, what? I'm trying to like bundle myself up but also smile, and then I find out they're these like new age ear warmers, and my friends and I still laugh about it today because they're randomly in Target and I'm on the box of them, and they didn't even tell me I was going on the box. My friend called me from Target one day and she was just like, hey, I'm in Target, I think I see like 1,000 of you staring at me. And I was like, oh, that campaign must have finally hit. So you never really know. And then I went in there and sure enough, there was like 20 of me, and my mom bought like them all for our family. And still I get like calls. I'm like, hey, I was in JCPenney's in New Jersey, and like, you're on the earmuff box. But yeah, I mean, like, you have to get into action. If you're just standing there smiling or making like dead face, they're not gonna like you. Have to snap into character, and you really have to empathize with the direction the brand is trying to go. They're looking for a certain look and attitude, and you got to be able to morph into that. I'd imagine, I never took acting classes. It's a little like, not method acting, but you got to snap into character, and it's really evident when you're not. It will always translate in the photos. So you're right. Now I'm on the opposite side of it, where I'm doing art direction for brand photo shoots. Fortunately, I had that camera time to kind of prepare myself for, okay, this is how you get people to give the energy you want. But yeah, I would say it's not even necessarily the industry that doesn't promote transparency. It's that when you go into it, typically you're very young. You're like 14, 15. To be transparent, I feel like you have to have a certain level of self-awareness and know who you are in the world. And when you are 14 and 15, I would assert you have not achieved that for yourself, right? Like you develop yourself a lot throughout high school, college years, even, your 20s. I'm probably still changing. And it is, I would say, based on just the age in which many kids, young women, young men enter that industry, it may be hard to be transparent, just given the fact that you don't know who you are to be transparent about. And then you have all these people telling you need to look a certain way, and this is what we want, and this is where it's going. So, I mean, again, that's just my experience with it. But I would say that's probably more of the reason why it's harder to be transparent in that agency. I mean, in that industry.
Is that something that, I mean, I can see how now with what you're doing now, that experience is tremendously beneficial for what you're doing now, because, and it's fascinating that, the line from Steve Jobs, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them, like looking backwards. Like, there are things in my life that happened where at the time I was like, oh, that was not a great experience. But now looking backwards, I'm like, wow, what I learned from that experience is absolutely necessary for my life today. And
Yeah.
I can see the modeling, how that is, I can see how you could probably take a lot of that and say, wow, I learned so much in that experience that I can apply today.
And it's to really go there, right? That's this podcast. The reason I entered modeling was like, I had a vendetta maybe. So when I was 14, I got Lyme's disease, although they never conclusively proved it. And as a result, I got Bell's palsy, which damages half of your face, or like the nerve. It causes the nerve, one of your facial nerves, to die. It crushes it, and then the nerve regenerates. And so I went through this period in 9th grade where I was frozen. I couldn't even stand to look at pictures of myself. And I think a lot of the modeling was fueled by this. I've always kind of been a competitive, like, type A person. And I was like, no, I'm gonna still do that. I'm gonna go into there and I'm gonna prove myself. And even though this, what was to me like traumatic, catastrophic thing happened and some residuals occurred, I'm still gonna prove that I can do anything, even when it comes to modeling. And that was particularly hard because at the time I only saw myself as quote unquote like disfigured. And when I did it, and I did it for a little while, and I really saw that, okay, I could, make a career out of this if I wanted to. It was almost like I was fulfilled in that way of like, okay, I've proved myself that I can do it. I've learned a lot of business lessons and a lot of behind the scenes that I think I have taken forth into branding. But for me, it was almost like this, I'm gonna prove that I can, because I was so rocked by this thing that happened to me.
And I think that pattern, what you just said, I can relate to in so many ways in my life. It's like, okay, I know that when I was in high school, I was told didn't get great grades. And I was told that, I don't know if it was, you'll be a loser or something like that, but there's certain events in my life that just, I can look back on and say, okay, that was fuel. Like, that was a defining moment in my life to push forward. And we've had a guest on that talked with a little bit of a lisp, and he said that he became a very, very, very ultra competitive debate champion, even though he had a lisp. And everybody said that, and we see that happen a lot, where we can actually use what we may consider to be a negative trait, for lack of a better word, and we can actually use that and turn that around, and it becomes one of our greatest powers. Like, it becomes one of our greatest tools.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I often wonder, like, it's a futile purpose. Like, I don't think I'm obviously ever going to have an answer. We're dealing in the largely hypothetical here, but who would I have been? How would I have turned out differently had I not experienced at such a young age losing control in that kind of way, really like being disfigured, having people poke fun at the fact that I couldn't move my face, even down to the physical ability not to smile. Whereas when a lot of people are like, okay, life gets you down, you give lemons, you make lemonade, just smile and like carry forward. And I was just like, but I can't, like, it's dead. I can't smile my way out of this. And I was a very bubbly person before that. So I look back on that, and there was this period of which I was very angry about it. I was always very like, how would my life have been different? Could I have gone on to do all these other things if I had a perfectly symmetrical face? And the point at which I think I started to make peace with it through meditation, therapy, the things that you do after traumatic events happen, is when I started to appreciate what I did get out of it, not what I lost from it. And what I like to think I got out of it, whether this is the truth or not, is empathy, an acute awareness for what it feels like to literally not have control, not be able to do certain things, be, disabled in a way, like the nerve damage. I always thought, like, I'm just if I ever became paralyzed, I will will myself to move. But then it happens and you get paralysis, and that's not necessarily the case. So I love to think that made me stronger, fueled me to do things that I maybe otherwise thought I couldn't do, like modeling, starting a business, that passion to like prove myself. and then empathy for other people's struggles, and just never knowing what happened to that. I still mark that as such a defining moment in my life. And when I share it with people, they're like, oh my God, like really? Like, that's crazy. I would have never guessed. I'm like, yeah, but it monumentally changed me and still like cuts a little bit at me. So, you know, you just never know. You never know what people have gone through. And I have such an appreciation for what people have gone through.
Yeah, I always had a CEO type round table, and there was an individual that spoke, and he said one of his keys to hiring people is he looks for people that have a chip on their shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, most people, it's hard to get them to elaborate that they have a chip on their shoulder. But if you can find that person that has something to prove to people, like that's one of the traits that he looks for in people. Because, you know, I'm going to show you, like, don't tell me. Matter of fact, I had somebody tell me today, don't tell me I can't do something. And I was the same way. Like, don't tell me, like, you want me to do something, tell me I can't do it. I have a scar on my arm. You can see it right there, I think.
Yeah.
And I had a Volkswagen when I was in high school.
Uh-huh.
And I had a keychain that had a Volt VW symbol on it. And I always liked the tattoos that were like the burns. For some reason, I like those type of tattoos. So I said, oh, I want to put this Volkswagen, you know, emblem on my arm. And somebody said, oh, you're not going to do that. And sure enough, I was like, okay. So I heated it up and stuck it on my arm and burned myself. It didn't turn out very well because you can't tell it's a Volkswagen symbol clearly.
Maybe for the best.
Yeah, because I don't drive a Volkswagen anymore. But if you want to fuel my fire, tell me I can't do something, or I can't be somebody, or I can't be someone. And my life experience has taught me that. And it's through failure, it's through pain, it's through painful circumstances that we learn how to get back up and fight. And, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a fighter, but I'm a survivalist, and I love a challenge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't for negative things, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have built that muscle, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, and I don't even know necessarily where I'm trying to go with this, but in the world of this conversation, like, and I also wonder on the other side of that, right? Like with modeling, I did it. I proved to myself I could do it. I proved to other people who it's funny, other people who told me I couldn't after I had that happen. Nobody actually told me I couldn't. Like the biggest person who I was proving myself to was myself. Nobody was like, you're never going to model, you know, you're disfigured. Nobody actually said that. I think I had this perception that that's what other people saw. Like, okay, now she has these residual effects and she can't do it. And I was like, I'm going to show all of them. But all of them were just all of the voices in my head telling me. Nobody actually ever was like, you don't have a future here. Like, just give up now. And, but I just wonder also with things that are driven from chips or pains, like for modeling for me, yes, I got to a point where it was happening, but it wasn't fulfilling. I didn't choose it out of aspiration. I chose it out of frustration in that chip. And while that gets you the fuel and the gusto and makes things happen, I do wonder if you only operate from there, right? Will fulfillment ever be reached? Are you actually speaking to who you are or just something to prove? So while it is incredibly beneficial, I feel like everything, there's a duality. Also, is it a potential like look out, because you might be going after something, you're building something on top of not actually your essence or like what you wanted. I know that sounds maybe woo-woo, but because you had something to prove.
Yeah. Now I understand exactly, because in hindsight, now I look back and say, why in the world did I feel that because someone told me that I couldn't do it, that I felt a need to do that? Like today I'm okay with like now I'd be like I don't like heights. Like, so if you dare me to jump out of a plane, I'm gonna say, screw you. Like I don't need to do that anymore. Like I don't need to prove myself anymore.
Right.
I think it was somewhat of a spark maybe. But in finding fulfillment, and boy, we got to that kind of quick. I think that comes, like you said, out of an internal force. It's inside me. And I've gone through life trying to find fulfillment in external sources.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately I realized, okay, nothing out there is going to fill me. Like, it has to come from within.
Yeah.
And you and I had a conversation about that on the phone. And that's kind of the journey that I'm on today is, who is John, and trying to live within myself, not within the confines of what society or other people say that I should be.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I've done so much self-development work. I won't say so much, right? I've done a decent amount of self-development work. Books, I've had coaches, I've gone through all of the landmark curriculum, which is absolutely great training for those of you who have not done the forum or advanced courses or SELP. It's a whole curriculum for life. And a lot of it is in pursuit of, who am I? What do I want? What am I out to create? And, what I've realized, especially from coaching and some of those things, is they're buried so deep under these perceptions that you think are yours, but you've just adopted from such a young age that it's almost like that is an endless journey. You will always be asking that question because you'll always be receiving layers of perceptions from other people. And sometimes, especially as a highly empathetic person, it really takes a lot for me to parse out, like, was I getting this from somewhere else? Is it truly me? Like, removing all those filters and uncovering those blind spots to who you, quote unquote, really are. And then there's who you are, but who do you want to create yourself to be? Because it's not necessarily a stagnant thing. You can create yourself to be somebody. So I think it's just a fascinating thing. And again, it's not a destination, because as soon as you get to who you are, I'd imagine that there's another level of who you are and who you want to be.
Yeah, your life changes, and it's I was talking to somebody today, and I said, once you think you have it figured out, you'll get thrown a curveball that you haven't hit before, because life just changes. That it's the way to keep us on our toes and keep us evolving. We're constantly evolving as humans, and every conversation I have with somebody adds another piece to my puzzle, like adds another layer. Like, oh wow, like I never thought of that before. And where does that take? It might take me down another journey. I mean, do you believe that, as it pertains to personal branding, that authenticity and transparency, because it's almost like I can create in the social media, I think we were talking about this, like I can create an alter ego. Like I could be somebody completely, and if I hired a personal branding person, is it necessary for me to be my authentic self as it pertains to personal branding? Do you understand? Am I asking that well?
You're asking a great question. I'll answer it in maybe two ways. I don't think it's necessary to develop a personal brand that's being authentic. All right. So you can create a brand. If I worked at it hard enough and I really, really had a strategy and consistently posted about fitness and documented me doing fitness things and tried to expand my knowledge on fitness. And I started writing blog posts about fitness, and my world became fitness. I could, in theory, and I know this because I teach people, not how to build inauthentic brands, but how to create yourself to be that, and how to have that personal brand. Now, I think when rubber hits the road, when it comes to your fulfillment and the value that you bring to others, that's going to fall down. Okay, great. You've built this illustrious personal brand. You get in conversations with clients, or you go to lay your head on the pillow at night. And it's that's where this lack of integrity with, okay, there's who I am that I say that I am. And you can do a remarkable job of doing that. I guarantee I could get you business doing that. You could get leads doing that. You could, drum up a lot of brand awareness doing that. But when it comes to the conversations you have with yourself and other people, you're going to know as quickly as they are, if you are not authentically passionate about what you say that you are in the world, they'll sniff it out. You'll feel just this incredible lack of not being fulfilled. And so I would argue that then the personal branding is not successful, because if personal branding is to put it out into the world, truly who you are and the value that you can bring, and when it comes down to it and it's your time to deliver and connect, that's not there, then yeah, I mean, the personal brand ultimately was a failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if we're not happy at night, then at the end of the day, who cares? It doesn't make a difference.
And people know when you're phoning it in. Even, let's just say, even if you are highly, highly competent and knowledgeable, they know when you're just phoning in, and they know when you're passionate and connected and curious. And I think the difference therein lies, or at least one of them, is what is your level of interest in yourself versus what is your level of interest in the other person. The strongest personal brands, Gary Vaynerchuk, all these people, Tony Robbins that we know and see, they are so successful, ironically, because their personal brand is so obsessed with providing stuff to other people and making a difference in other people's lives. And I think it's easy to get in this trap of doing everything for the posture and the presentation of the personal brand. It becomes this me conversation, when the irony and almost the contradiction is the more that you focus on the people you're trying to serve, the quicker your brand equity is going to go up.
Right. Yeah. And that's it. It's one of those age-old adages, like the more you give, the more you receive. Like, well, it's actually true. It's not like that's not like a joke. It's not like one of those lines that people say. It's, in my experience, it's true. The more I give, the more I receive.
Yeah.
And the less it's about me.
Yes. And the biggest, I think one of the biggest ahas that I've gotten from self-development is, and I remind myself of this when I get anxious, because I can be anxious from time to time, or when there's this perception that I need to perform, right? It's time to do a consultation. You need to perform. No, I don't need to perform. I need to connect. Like, it's not time to perform. It's time to connect and provide value and get curious and ask the questions to the client. But one of the biggest takeaways I got was, they said, when you're out here with other people, when you're so invested in what they're saying, when you're genuinely and innately curious about what's going on with them, when you're in the conversation, there is actually zero room to be in your own head. Right. And in that, I find reprieve. I don't have to think my life. I don't have to think my way through life, strategize my way through life. If I'm just so connected with my clients, my audience, and I'm out here and I'm conversing and listening to them, it actually takes all the pressure off of you.
And when you're in that type of conversation, at least for me, I can actually feel that with the other person. Like physically, it's almost like there's some sort of like cosmic rays coming at me, and I can feel their energy. I can feel their passion. Mm-hmm. And the other side, when someone is talking about something and I don't feel it, then I feel like I'm being sold. Like, mm-hmm. I feel like, okay, you're pitching me, mm-hmm. but I can't feel the energy that's coming from you.
Mm-hmm. This is why I love physics, and I love this, like, this is the tie-in, right? So, like, my amateur appreciation for physics, it is scientifically proven, John, that is what's happening. This isn't just a like woo woo. I feel it. Like, I feel it. We're on the same wavelength. Like, I can feel their energy. No, like, that is actually quite literally what's happening. You are feeling their magnitude of their energy. There's this amazing podcast. I implore you guys to check this guy out. His name is Jeffrey Combs. He has a website. He is a coach. The value that he drops on his podcast and his trainings are just really fantastic stuff. And so he did this podcast with Dr. Joe Dispenza. And this guy is really, really, I'm going to butcher the description of him, but in essence, he is foremost in a thought leader in studying like energy in people and like the heart-mind connection. And they were saying in one of their podcasts, it was so fantastic. I wish I would have wrote this down before we got on the phone, but you can either be matter, moving matter, like forcing your way through life, or you're operating at like an energetic field. And when you're operating with that level of clarity and positivity and that plane versus pushing yourself and forcing yourself through and phoning it in, they have literally measured like the energy around people, and it's massive. I forget the amount. It was like I don't know, I want to say like 90 yards. Like you literally project an energy and waves and people enter into it. And so when you're in these conversations and you're connected and people are passionate and they're listening to you, it is not just a feel good vibe. It is quite literally an energetic field that you are picking up on of theirs, they're picking up on in you, and you guys are building that field together versus somebody talking at you, lowering your field or operating at a very small force field, and it's not like building in any kind of way. And again, this is why I say I have an amateur appreciation. I couldn't tell you the science behind it. I can point you to the resources. Dr. Joe Dispenza and his work is an amazing one that actually shows the measurements behind how this works when you're really in line with it and you're in the flow zone and you're connected.
I mean, because I have no, I'm not even an amateur in quantum physics. Like, I know that quantum means a very, very small particle. I understand that much, but I failed physics in school. So, but you know, this whole thing about like your network is your net worth. From what you just said, if I surround myself with a certain group of people and I'm in that energy field versus another group of people, it would make sense from what you just said, it would make sense that my life can become bigger because of the people that I'm around.
Yes, your energy field is quite literally expanded and more powerful. And so when you think about who you're choosing to surround yourself by and the conversations you're having and your level of connectivity with other people, I would urge people to not just think of it, again, as the impact it has on me and selfishly, like, oh, you know, this person's not that great. But like literally by doing that, you're limiting your ability, your reach, your field to go and impact other people in the world. And, you know, I don't want to say vibe at a higher level because it sounds so, you know, ambiguous and conceptual. But if you understand physics and that particles and atoms are vibrating at a certain level, the higher your vibration, the more powerful you're going to call things into action. So, and the bigger the force field is going to be. So this is why I started to really get into quantum physics, because I saw that I was feeling this with people. I saw that people were manifesting their lives around me. And yeah, I read The Secret. It's a very great book. It does a great job, I would say, at elementary, like explaining this stuff. But that's when I started to get into it, because I went to the website like a true junkie and I was like, must get more, cannot stop reading. And it was like suggested readings, you know, and then they had a bunch of quantum physics books. And I'm like, why is this The Secret? But you realize it's all happening on an atomic level and a vibrational level. And it's not just somebody gives you the feel goods or you have a gut feeling. This is things that are happening in the physical world that we should, in my opinion, give a little bit more credence to than just, oh, it's a gut feeling.
You know what just hit me as we're having this conversation? And once again, I'm no expert in quantum physics, but my hypothesis would be I can't have that feeling over a text message or a direct message sent through Instagram. Like, I would think that can't be transferred via this device. I actually have to be like networking. Yeah, actually has now a scientific reason for why it's important, because I need to be one-on-one to build relationships with people. And that I can't do that via an electronic device. That's just my feeling, my gut.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, and it's kind of like I'm exploring this as we're talking, but here's the thing. I have a really, really great friend, and we worked together at the company that I was at before I started my own. One of my best friends, I mean, this person and I are so in step, and just like we had that we shared physical space, you know. He's a great friend of mine, and we established our connection. And they have this other theory in quantum physics where it's entanglement. And basically what it is atoms and particles can get entangled with each other, right? And then when they're acting and taking on the same property and state as each other, even if they're separated by large distances. So if two atoms are entangled, one is on Earth and one is on the moon, I mean, that's how big of a distance we're talking. and you manipulate one here on Earth, real time on the moon, the entangled atom will be manipulated. So they're in step with each other, right? You change one regardless of distance, the other one is not feeling, it's quite literally changing with it. So it's called entanglement, and you can look at it. And again, I want to preface this. I feel like my legal team, like, disclaimer, not just as I understand it, but truly. So I've researched this because I'm fascinated. Like, oh, okay, if atoms can become entangled, if particles become entangled, and we as humans in the world around us are comprised of atoms and particles, what would that assert? For me, it's that people can become entangled. And you know those people where you spend enough time around them and you're like, I can tell the moment they walk into the room, well, not a good day, and my energy level is down because of it, and because we're in step. So it's funny because he texted me this morning. He happens to live in Manhattan. And before I actually texted him, and he said, I was just thinking about you. I'm having a great morning. And I said, I am too. And I said, I can actually just I can feel your energy. Like, I really, I know. It's almost like I know when he's not feeling great. I know when he's feeling good. Like a parent with their child, you sense it. You're like, something's going on with John. Something's going on with him. You could be miles and miles apart, and you just kind of know. And I feel like entanglement could possibly be at the root of that. So no, I don't think that the phone can possibly transmit it if that foundation isn't there. But I would say with certain people, you get to that level, and like, even within a simple hi text message, you're like, all right, what's up?
Right. Yeah. And I know that sometimes if I've met certain people and I have a true, like, a conversation with them, I can feel like, whoa, we are vibing together. I had a conversation the other day that I thought was gonna be 15 minutes, ended up being like an hour and a half. And I literally thought that I was talking to myself. I was like, whoa, like, this is so weird. And that was within like 15 minutes of the conversation. Like, we could just feel this vibe together. Like, it was just a different level. It was like, it was bizarre. And we can walk into a room sometimes, and like, I know I've been in situations where I can walk into a room and I can see somebody and they say something, and I'm like immediately drawn to that person.
Yes.
It's just like, whoa, like, for some reason I'm drawn to that person to have a conversation, relationship, whatever. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, is it premonition? Is it a gut instinct? And that's what I'm kind of pointing to with the energetic field you put out and the ability to entangle, premonition, gut feeling, whatever. But if you study it on a physical, like a physics level, there is science to why these occurrences are happening for you, while you're getting these impulses in your brain, why you're feeling these things. And it's not just like this hippy dippy, like, I have this feeling. It is actually happening. Like, you can point to it if you explore it. And I think that's why I started to get into it, because I'm such a person who's like, I'm going to dig and I'm going to dig and I'm going to dig, because I need to make the logical connection. And I started to see these phenomenons and these people with big impacts. I'm like, there has to be a logical reason this stuff happens. You can't just tell me they're good people or this. Like, I need to understand the science behind what's happening. And that's when I started to go dive into it. Joe Dispenza, great resource for that. There's a lot of books. Gary Zukov, he's like one of Oprah is a proponent of him. He's written books about quantum physics as it relates to humans and people, and in ways that are digestible and not just theoretical. Like, you could actually tie to your everyday life and why certain things happen. But if you think about atoms getting entangled, and I think we talked about this on the phone, this is where, explore with me, if you will, John and audience, because I'm just going to go there and then probably maybe I should stop, because you could really I'm not knowledgeable enough to explain, but this is where it really rocks me if I choose to believe it, and I do. If atoms can become entangled at large distances, such as the moon and the earth, and you can manipulate one and the other one simultaneously starts getting manipulated at that large of a distance, and you see that time is just a measurement and a dimension. As humans, we can only linearly process time. Like, okay, there's a start and there's a finish and we're going at it this way. But just like distance, it is a measurement, it's a dimension, space, time and stuff like that. Then you can draw the conclusion that, okay, if atoms can get entangled over that big of a distance, could atoms get entangled over time? Because time is just a measurement as well. It's hard for us to perceive it as humans as that, but it is a measurement. So if everything's happening at once and an atom now can get entangled with an atom in the future and they're manipulated, I feel like that's why the law of attraction and stuff works, because you're putting out there what you want as you see it in the future, as it's happening now, and you're programming yourself and your makeup to start acting and being in alignment with that. I would say you're not almost manifesting it, you're just stepping into that possible version of your life, and you're getting entangled with that, and you're blinders on, that's the only thing I see. It's not just manifesting. Like, I actually think you're stepping into that reality for yourself, and all of you gets entangled with that possibility. So I know that that's extremely conceptual, but for me, that is the biggest mind-blowing part of entanglement, knowing that time, just like distance, is a measurement. And if everything is happening at once, and you believe in like multiverses and different, and like Schrodinger's cat, there's a million different answers to that equation. It could be dead, it could be alive, depending on, it really just depends on the perceiver. Like, you can just step into a reality for yourself. You can dial into that version that you want of your life and entangle yourself in it till it quite literally is manifested. So I feel like I'm crazy now saying all that stuff, but I mean, it really, that is the level of which I think I became so into physics and needing to understand, is that possible? Could I do that? Why do people manifest and have this presence and ability to do that in their lives?
Well, I mean, I think I mean, I don't know if I've ever shared this with anybody, but my wife and I watched that movie, The Secret, and we read the book, and we created like this vision board thing, which was downstairs in my basement. And we had this vision of a house. And just like it happened in the movie, we ended up buying that house. Like that same house we ended up buying. Didn't remember, like, it wasn't like we looked at this vision board every single day. We had just kind of put it out there. And then after we bought the house, we were like, oh my gosh, like we're in that house. Like it was almost creepy. Like we're actually there. And there's been other events in my life where I've journaled things or wrote things down that weren't supposed to happen. Almost like, well, that's really not even a possibility. And then I look back like, whoa, that happened. Like, you know, and there's studies done about goal setting and vision boards, but there's probably some science behind why it happens as well.
And that was the journey. Like, I got it. Okay, goals and vision boards and whatever. But I needed to understand the science behind, this is not stranger than fiction, you buying that house. This is not a happy coincidence. This is not just the power of positive belief. And it is that there has to be, and I'm one of those people maybe who need to see it to believe it. But the thing that drove me was, no, I need to understand exactly why this happens. And that is, you know, all of these theories. And when you get to that level in that field, you could say that what you guys did was you dialed into that possibility, that version of your life, and you just channeled it so much that you manipulated who you are now with that version of you in the future. And you just started being in step with it and making choices that got you there. And then you get there and you're like, whoa, I manifested it. And I feel like there has to be a science behind it. We probably haven't fully gotten there to really connect all the dots in that way, but I feel like if people only understood how rooted things like The Secret and power of positive belief and these feel-good theories are in actual physics, they would be very careful with what they thought and how they connected with people, and and just the consciousness of which they're moving and the intentionality of which they're moving through life with. I'm certainly not always the best at that, but when I do feel off course, these are the things that pull me back into, yeah, there's science, like get yourself on a better wavelength, girl, because you're not there.
Yeah. And if you study, and it's the cool thing about doing something like what we're doing right now, I get to talk to all kinds of different people, but it's amazing how many of them use the same tools. It's like like goal setting and positive thinking and trying to program our mind. Like there's a lot of people that, I mean, like I bought Tony Robbins. What was the first, his first, gosh, I bought VHS tapes, if I remember correctly. They weren't even DVDs. They were like cassette tapes. I think it was like 16 or 17. And like the stuff actually works. That's why people are still buying it. And there's patterns of what works. And if you study people and you study business and you study success and you study happiness and you study fulfillment, you'll see that a lot of these people use these same tools. So if nothing else, if I want to be like someone else and they have what I perceive that I want, I just want to follow what they do. Like they have it, I want it. So what are you doing to get it? Oh, I'm just going to copy that.
Yeah, best copycat wins.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
The difficulty that I find with most people is, how do you trust that? Like, I have this feeling, I have this intuition. How do I know when to trust that? Like, and that's where I think comes down to self-awareness. Probably, I'd love your input on, like, when did you get to the point where you were like, okay, I now understand this intellectually, and I have this feeling, but do I trust the feeling?
Yeah. I would not say I'm at that point, right? And like it fluctuates on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes, like anything, I feel like I'm totally in step with it. Like my heart is there, there's this gut feeling, I'm in it, and I'm using these tools to push myself forward. And then other times I'm just completely human and I want to outthink myself of every situation and provide reasons and excuses and justify and like outthink life. And every time I try and do that, I'm not saying don't sit down and do like cognitive thinking and like critical thinking. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying when it comes down to big things in life, decisions, you often know within like 2 seconds if this is something that feels right for you in your life. But so often we then try and argue with that feeling. And it can be tough. Like, is it actually, am I being impulsive? I guess is the question. Am I being impulsive by just blindly following this feeling? Or am I stepping into like what I know to be true? And I don't know if I have an answer for that, but I will say that first impulse of this feels right or not is generally spot on. And the critical thinking that happens after of, okay, now how do I go about this? Let's really think about it. It can certainly move it forward. But I feel like that twinge at first of like, this feels right or feels wrong is never really a miss. And it's becoming conscious enough of that and quiet enough of that so you can hear it and respond to it. And if nothing else that you do with it, at least you heard it. And you're not just kind of jumping from here to there. And you're leading again with your heart and then using your mind to kind of push you forward as opposed to just trying to strategize and think life. I watched this really, really, really great interview on Oprah. I mean, it was sad. This woman lost three of her daughters and her parents in a house fire. And in one night, it was like Christmas Eve, her house burned down. It was a Super Soul Sunday. And she said something to me about grief, well, not to me, right? To the audience. And she said, I realized that you can't think yourself out of bed in the morning. At some point, you just have to put your feet on the floor and get out of bed. And for those times where I feel stuck or I'm trying to figure out if something is a good or a bad move, it's like if you can listen to that twinge of this feels right or wrong, and then you just put your feet on the floor, you're going to make momentum forward. And maybe it's going to be a little bit in the wrong direction, but you can course correct. But trying to outthink and out strategize life, I feel like is a surefire way of A, not really going anywhere, and B, having a lot of regrets when you get to a certain point, because you can't think yourself out of bed. You can't think yourself through a sales call. You can't think yourself to losing weight. Ultimately, you just have to do whatever it is and really just stay connected with it.
Which interestingly enough comes back to physics. Like an object in motion will stay in motion. Like, but you got to move. Like you got to do something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, I've been through points in my life, and again, largely because of some of the stuff I shared with you earlier, where I have been depressed or have had anxiety. I have, had OCD and this stuff throughout the course of my life. And I've had friends and family members who have felt depression and who have gone through hard times. And the one thing I just always say to them is it feels so hard to do any little thing, but just do any little thing because momentum favors action. You can't think yourself out of depression. You can't think yourself out of anxiety. The only way out, the only access is to just like 1, 2, 3 move. Like 1, 2, 3 move. That's how you get through life.
Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck because they try and overthink it. They try and I've said it before, you don't think your way to success. Like it doesn't happen. You do, and you fail, and you do, and you do some more, and you fail, and you learn, and you keep going. And I think that, and I hate the word success sometimes, but that's a microcosm of life. Like you just keep moving. Matter of fact, I was having a conversation with Shaq, and he was like, he said something like, what did you say, Shaq? He's going to hate me for putting him on a site like this, but he was like, I have so much to do. And I said, I'm going to record that and play it for you every day, because that's your life. Every day is going to be like, I have so much to do. Like I'll have so much to do until the day I die, and then I won't have anything to do, I guess. I don't know. But like, it's not going to stop. I'm not going to slow down. I mean, it's just going to keep going and going and going. And that's part of the joy. That's the fun part is when you're moving. Like if I'm standing still, like, it feels uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the same thing when you look at any life change. When I look back retrospectively and look at starting a business, like I was out of my damn mind. I had a great salary for being 26. I think it was 26 when I started the business, 26 years old. I had benefits. Like my parents were like, what are you doing? Like, why would you ever do that? And so I look back and I'm like, okay, I had I literally had no promise of a client at that point. I had done a bunch of small projects, and I had no way of replacing my very, like, for a 26-year-old, like, comfortable salary. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had this meeting the day before I decided to quit. So I had this meeting with this firm. They brought me in. I was like maneuvering on the low, like just sneaking off. Like I think I like took a sick day to have a meeting with this potential client. I had the meeting, and the next day was the day I decided I'm going to quit my job and start this business. And I talked to my family. My parents were like, why in the world would you do that? Why wouldn't you just wait to hear if you get this large contract? And then you'll know you have that safety net. And if you don't get it, then just work for another opportunity and then jump when you have that other opportunity. Like, why would you quit before you know if they're going to give you this contract? And I talked to the person I was dating at the time, and he said much the same thing. Like, just wait, like you'll have a plan. And then if you don't, you'll find another plan. And I talked to some, friends who knew what I was going through. And it just got to this moment where I realized, oh my God, if I don't get the contract, I'm going to be so scared that I won't leave the corporate world. Like if they come back and they're like, sorry, sweetie, you're not for us. Then I'm going to be like, like I can't leave. Like, look, I can't even get large contracts. So I literally decided I have to quit to put myself in a position to move and produce and move and produce. Because if I didn't, if there was only certainty, it was not going to be enough to motivate me. And then you just move and you move and you get another client, and sometimes you mess up stuff, and then you get a logo and you get a website. I mean, I hadn't had a website for the first 6 months of my business. I'm in branding. Like I know it's terrible. Do as I say, not as I do, but yeah, like I just do and do and do and do. And then I turned around a year later and I met with my accountant. He was like, you outpaced your salary in like 8 months. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how did that happen? But it happens because you just move. You can't think yourself into a business. You can't think yourself out of bed. You just move and you do the next thing, and you'll stumble, and then you'll do the next thing better. And that is life at large.
So when you took that jump to launch your own agency, did it just go easy for you? Like, was it just all sunshine and rainbows from there on out?
No, I cried for everything. So I will say this. I quit. I did end up getting the contract. And then I had to go to Utah for a friend's wedding, Utah, Idaho, like a glacier lake, the next week. So I think that I did have a little bit of an atypical thing where like I quit, the contract came through, and then I was like, oh, yes, like I'm going to Redfish Lake. By the way, Idaho and Utah, great places to go for like after you start a business. And I went with, really good friends, and I had a great time, but I was just feeling like so excited. And so for a week, I actually just I celebrated. I did have an established income stream, and I was happy, and I had this vacation, and I was fully stepping into one of the best parts of entrepreneurship was life on your own terms. I was like, I don't have to get this vacation approved by anybody. If I'm going to stay out for 2 weeks, I'm going to stay out there for 2 weeks. And it was just great. And then you get into it in the consultations, and it's this learning curve of, running a business, dealing with humans, client fires. I mean, things like that happen. So after I got back from vacation, that's when I started crying. What was I thinking? But I could, having said that, and through the tears and through the tremendously awesome feelings of accomplishment that you get when you create a business, and even more so when you do something for a client and their business explodes because of it. That is the best feeling in business, where you're like, I knew it. I knew that this was going to work. They're seeing it, their checkbook and their bank account and their life is literally changing because of what I did for them. That is the highest of highs every single time. But even going through all of that, you just turn around and you're like, I can't believe I did this. And you learn. And I could never, I actually had a nightmare last night. True story. I'm not just saying this for the purpose of the podcast. I had a nightmare that I had to go back and apply for a corporate job. I woke up, John, it was worse than if somebody was chasing me in a dream. I woke up in sweats. I was like, can't do it. We'll never do it. Could never go back to corporate.
And that I know that there are quite a few people that will watch this that are on this fence, and it's like, oh, I have this job. It's comfortable, but I'm either not happy, or as a matter of fact, most people don't even say I'm not happy. They say, I fucking hate this job. I hate my job. What advice? It's so much easier for me to give advice to that person. Well, just quit. If you're not happy, just quit.
I know.
But what would you say to that person? Because you're never going to have it all figured out. Never.
You'll have it figured out. I would say just work to get figure out what it is you want to do. And then just work to get one client on the side. I mean, if you're in a services business, if you're putting out a product, just work to get, I don't know, the first prototype or person to literally pay money for your product. So you beta tested it with people's pockets and not just, oh yeah, that's a great product idea. I would totally buy that. I'm not believing that until somebody pays me.
Right.
I've had so many great product ideas, and it will always prevail whether people are like, yeah, I'm going to buy it. Let me know when it's out. And they actually do, versus that sounds amazing. I would totally buy that. And then you're like, hey, my product's live. And they're like, I'm not going to buy that. So
that means your stuff's not that good, by the way, just in case people are wondering. If they're not willing to pay you, it's because it's not that good.
Exactly. So I would say to that person, I would say just quit, because I'm in this entrepreneurial space and I'm like, just quit, like drive your savings account to the ground and then just build it back up again.
That's what I did.
Yeah, whatever. That's what happens. And then you'll get a big contract and you'll just figure it out. But no, I would definitely say, just again, momentum favors action. Just work to get the first client. Like I said, I was in branding and I didn't have a website for 6 months. I just wanted the one client, and I got the one client. And then again, I didn't know that I had them when I quit, but it was the idea of I could get them and they liked me and they wanted a meeting with me and there was going to be more of them, that gave me the confidence to go in and quit. So get the one, and don't wait until you have the replacement revenue stream. That does not happen because you're not giving yourself enough capacity to build the business to get it to a point where you're going to replace your revenue. Right? Like there's maybe different business models. My boyfriend is in network marketing where, that actually can happen. Like I see people on his team actually do that. They're like, they get that power of the network going. And then they're like, hey, like now I'm generating 60,000. I'm going to leave the job.
Right.
But for, like if you're starting a business, like services or products, focus on getting the one purchase, the one client, and then do it, like dive into growing it from there.
It's fascinating. And it's so weird. I'm a little bit older than you and majority of the listeners that are watching this. And this idea of branding, like when I started my career, this is 20 years ago, I guess, like that didn't, like the brand that I worked for was called Merrill Lynch. I was a stockbroker. Like that was the brand. Matter of fact, I wasn't allowed to have my brand. That's one of the reasons I left, because I wasn't allowed to do things my way. But the idea of a personal brand just wasn't a thing back then. And there are still people today that still don't understand, well, what's a personal brand? So can you, in just simplistic and human, normal, like kids terms, what is a personal brand and why is it so important today?
In its very simplest terms, a personal brand is when who you say you are to be is in alignment with the actions that you're doing, or the actions that you're taking are in alignment with who you say you are, right? And so we see this in this world because of social media and digital media and all the stuff that's accessible now to individuals to brand themselves. The first thing is you have to decide who you are and just clearly articulate that. Right? Because if you just start doing all of these things, over time, people are going to put it together. She only posts about fitness. She must be into fitness. But when I work with clients, the first thing we do is, of course, establish their unique value proposition, their titles, their modifiers. Like, I am a branding expert. And then everything I do, engagements I take on, even the way I teach my LinkedIn course is from a personal brand platform, like brand yourself to be a thought leader on LinkedIn. Everything is in step with that, all of your social media things, but it's not just the public facing stuff, right? Like that's where the trap is. Oh, okay, it's going to be everything I do on social media. It's the kind of clients you do and do not agree to take on, the ways that you run your business, the conversations that you have with people. So again, everybody has always had a personal brand. When you were at Merrill Lynch, your personal brand was your reputation, and that was built through conversations and your mark in the organization and your book of clients. And then people, they knew your personal brand because of that. But now with social media, we have this platform to have larger, farther reaching conversations and to do things on a public platform that are in alignment with who you are, you say you are, who you are, you say yourself to be. But the first part of that is very much figuring out who is it that I say myself to be. And then everything else is in alignment with that. And the flip side of who is it that I say myself to be, who are the people that I want to serve? Because then everything else you do is always going to bring value if you don't lose sight of, this is who I say I am, and these are the people who I am for. Therefore, my content, my action becomes the intersection of those two things.
It is, in your opinion, because you and I had a conversation about Gary Vee and we talked about content. Can you have a personal brand without content?
I think you're going to have a weak personal brand. Again, like you can have a personal, everybody has a personal brand, indisputable, right? Like look at anybody, the way you describe them is their personal brands. Like, oh, he's a this or that or whatever. Yeah, you can build a personal brand, but if you're not putting out content, if you're not putting out things on social, the pace at which and the levels of reach that you're going to have with that personal brand, I mean, be prepared for the long, long haul. I mean,
so what if you're 18 to, what if you're 22 years old and you don't really know what you're, I guess what I'm asking is, I think there's a lot of hesitation about, once again, is what is my personal brand? So therefore, until I figure out who I am and what I really want to be, I'm just not going to do anything.
Yeah. Great question. So I was 22, and when I was working at the company, I just had this obsession with marketing and building things. So I decided I'm going to build a blog. Like instead of having cable TV, I would just go home, nerd that I was, and be like, I'm going to build a Squarespace blog. I literally paid a graphic designer. I still work with him today. He's one of the best graphic designers I know, to build a logo for my blog that wasn't generating any income. And for no other reason was I just wanted like an identity and a blog. And I drove to DC. I thought I was big time. I was like, here's my idea for the blog. Send it to me. So I did. I went down there and I met with him. This was the blog's name. I kid you not. It's so funny. I always really liked fashion. Obviously, you know, the background and at my interest at the time, which was so weird as somebody who's working in subprime lending, like those things. I just like march around the office with like my newest H&M because that's all I was affording at 22 years old. Like, yes, I am here with my corporate wear. And so I loved it. And so the blog was the chic exec, or just chic exec. And it was like, I don't, the tagline, I could probably still find it, was like, look good, work hard, or something like that. Like it was just so ridiculous. It's probably still live if you guys go to see it. And the whole thing was this play on the chic executive officer. I was like, women of power, like we can look good and feel good and lead well. Or that's what it was. It was like, look good, lead well. I was like a marketing
That's actually pretty good. I kind of like that.
Right? Because I wanted to build a brand. Like, so I did this and I built this brand of chic exec. Like, this is a community of chic executive officers, of which I was not. I was 22. And it's like, look good, lead well. And like, and all of my musings on life, down to my experiment with getting eyelash extensions and like how it was perceived in the office, or just like things you should maybe never write about, or just like who would read this. But I'll say this, by trying to start that was my attempt at starting a personal brand. It was passions that I liked, fashion and business, and the intersection of those two things, because that was me for modeling, right? Like I started in fashion, but I got obsessed with the business, and it's always been an interest of mine. But through putting that brand out there, what I came to see was, I love creating content. I love telling stories. And my favorite part of building that brand was literally just to build a brand. And it exposed me to what my true like passions really were, which ultimately evolved into my brand as I have it now. So get messy with your brand and know that it's, as you are as a person, going to evolve. I have zero doubts that my brand will be different in 5 years, 10 years, and everything just shifts in accordance with that. But oftentimes that sandbox, that exploration, that building one can actually be a vehicle of introspection to really see. For me, it was like, oh no, I'm doing this because I just I like building a brand. And this was a fun project of mine. So do it and be okay with it. There's actually this guy on LinkedIn, Bruce Kazanoff. He has seriously like 800,000 followers. He's an influencer on the platform. His whole brand is centered around being one of the world's like top ghostwriters for huge Fortune 500 CEOs. Like some of the speeches and the things that they write, they're not writing, it's this guy. And so he's branded himself as such on LinkedIn for years. He's a LinkedIn influencer. They know him, he knows them. He's a big deal. In the last 2 months, he's declared himself and revealed that he's had this passion for photography. And so now he's also exploring that and putting that on LinkedIn, but he's documenting his journey and admitting that he's a novice. So he's like, I feel like a social media novice again. Now, this is the guy who's one of the biggest players on LinkedIn. I'm learning how to do Instagram to sell my photos. And it's so endearing to watch him now evolve this third facet of his personal brand. And we're rooting for him because he does have an other established personal brand. So it's only going to build momentum for the next ones and be okay with that experimentation, especially if you're in your young 20s. Like if I wouldn't have gotten the chic exec off the ground, I don't think I would be to the point where I was building brands and feeling comfortable with that or realizing that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, which I think it goes back to just take action. Just do something, and then that momentum will open up new doors, new possibilities, new ways of thinking, and then you just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and again, if not for any other thing that I got, the graphic designer that I was introduced to who built the Chic Exec logo is seriously like still one of my number one go-tos. He and I have a great relationship, great friendship because of it. He's helped me build amazing brands. We have a great partnership. He does a lot of my client work. So, if not for that, I wouldn't have had one of the great strategic partnerships in my business today. Everything will, like you said, when you look back and reverse, you're like, oh yeah, and then that, and then that, and then that, and then this is how I have everything that I have now.
What do you look like with what your agency does now? Is it mainly business to business, or is it mainly like, you work with individuals, or is it a combination of both? Like what does your ideal client look like, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So to clarify one thing, not an agency, actually came in to be, my idea was to be the antithesis of that, but it's funny because in a lot of ways, I just refer a lot of clients to agencies because they need that level of sometimes work, but it is truly consulting on a brand strategy and personal branding side. And from that way, corporate brand strategy, yes, the clients are looking like businesses who have been around for like 5 to 10 years. They grew a lot. Now they need somebody to come in to co-create with the leadership team. What is the story of the organization? What is it that we're doing here? What is our mission? What are our values? And let's really parse that out and get clarity for ourselves. And that's not something I'd ever advocate, outsourcing just an agency. That's great when you need to build out the site and get to deliverables, but you want to have a co-creative process because you're talking about the identity of your company. You want, an inquiry-led discussion of where are we going here? And that's not to say agencies don't do it. I just kind of found that that's my angle with it is really coming in and sitting with and doing consultations with the leadership team to get that clarity for themselves and empower them before they go to an agency. So there's that side of it. The B2C side, or the business to individual, I would say business to solo prop, the business to consultant, the business to real estate agent, the business to the solopreneurs that I work with, that is really, really played out in the LinkedIn, the personal branding on LinkedIn. And again, I started consulting clients just using the brand methodologies that I knew you could at an organizational level to position themselves on LinkedIn. I had a couple of different larger ticket consultations with people that had the budget that allowed it. And we worked through their LinkedIn. We came up with the LinkedIn strategy. And I mean, they got national press. They got long-term government coaching contracts. They started keynoting because of it. And that's when I really figured out, okay, there's something here. The results that I'm creating with clients are replicatable, systematic. I'm teaching all of them the same exact principles. It is quite literally a system of which I move people through. That's when I realized, okay, this is the thing that's going to help me scale the business. This is the curriculum that is really something I cracked on my own figured out for myself. It's how I got, connected to Fox Business and started talking. Like Fox Business called me and they were like, hey, Jessica Alba and the Honest Company, they kind of messed up. What's your thoughts on it? And I was like,
wow.
Okay, well, and then, I went on to say that. And then they called me a month later and they were like, hey, Walmart is sponsoring the Oscars and they're making these 30-second clips from people like Seth Rogen. And we need to know, like, what is your opinion? Do you think the Academy's brand is going to suffer because Walmart, or do you think that Walmart's brand is going to be elevated because of this partnership with the Academy? Your thoughts, go. And I mean, it really all transpired in speaking engagements because of LinkedIn. And that's when I realized, like, I figured out something for myself. I got businesses and clients from Canada, startups from Toronto calling me, all because of LinkedIn. And once I kind of figured out the game and systematized it myself, started teaching it to other clients, that's when I went into now creating the online course, the coaching groups and the training. And the one that I just finished, I mean, one of my clients just got on literal Fox Morning News because she wrote a book, and they were like, hey, we saw your book stuff on LinkedIn. We need somebody tomorrow morning to come talk to us about healthy eating. Like, it was crazy, and it just kept happening. So that's the business to consumer side. That's the ideal client on that. They're definitely consultants. They are one-person businesses who are trying to be thought leaders in their space, get speaking, get press, get clients, get international clients, and really want a systematic way that they can plug into their calendar and just execute to produce those results.
So, and I just want to make sure that these are your words. So basically what you will do with an individual is help develop an overall strategy, but then part of the execution of that, they may have to bring in other people. So if you need to have a website and content, you don't do that, but you may give them tell them, here's what it needs to look like, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I just sit with them really as a guide in that process, because here's the thing, a lot of people, they go and they'll hire designers, they'll hire the web team, they'll hire the agency or whatever, and there will be this disappointment because they didn't get clarity for themselves and what they were trying to do with the brand. So despite their best efforts in communicating that to an agency, I don't fault agencies on this, I fault the client clarity. It ends up being kind of a disappointment because they didn't take the necessary corporate soul searching to be like, okay, who is it that we really are? What do we want here? What are our values? How are we articulating them? And so I actually started doing workshops with corporations, and, key members of their leadership team and their sales team would come in, and we would literally just go for it for 4 hours and work them through, okay, what really are your vision? What are your values? And then based on all these things, what do you need to execute that? Always going to be a website that's like the living entity of your business online, and who's going to be the right players to bring that to fruition for you.
How did you get to the point where you felt comfortable like charging for this? Because there are a lot of people out there that may have some sort of unique skill set, and I think you and I talked about this right before the show. But when did you realize, wow, people will actually pay me for this? Or was it you just asked for it? Like, you just had, by the way, here's what's going to cost you.
Yeah, it was definitely, like, as you know, I started it as kind of a hobby on the side. And so I almost set myself up not to be paid. And this is really like, this is being 100% honest. Like, a lot of my boyfriends, the people I dated, were entrepreneurs, right? And I think that it makes good sense why, right? Like, we both share this drive. It's just something I value in a partner. But so I was working at corporate, and I would see my significant other building this business and making money, and I'd be like, this is so annoying. I think I'm definitely working twice as hard with my business on the side of my regular business, yet like they're making money. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, you're a fucking idiot. They're asking for it. You're not. You're like, that's the difference, Kate, by the way. If you're waiting for the aha moment, nobody's going to offer to pay you, by the way. Like, if you come in and you're going to do something for somebody for free, the last thing they're going to do is like, hey, you've been doing such a great job that I've been thinking it's really high time we pay you. Like, nobody's going to do that. So I did. I would like, I would just watch them build these businesses, and I was like, I know, like, I think I'm smarter in some ways. I think I could really do this. Why are they making money? It was, it sounds so foolish when I say it out loud, but so then I started charging, and then it was like, this is the evolution of Kait's pricing journey. And I'll be really honest about it. When I got the first client, I was like, what should I charge? And you kind of go into like, there's the point you want to start at, which is like, will they pay me $50 an hour? And then there's the point where like, okay, you're going to look at other competition, like, oh, other marketing consultants are charging $150, but wait, I'm not necessarily as experienced as them. They've had their business for a while. So, and then you kind of like weirdly meet in the middle of like, oh, like, wow, they'll pay me $50 and oh, they're charging $150. So I'm just going to like 100 sounds good. And that's what my hourly rate was. Like 100 sounds great. And then I really got booked and people were like, yes, sounds good. Here's a check. And then I had the problem of like at capacity. And that's when you realize, okay, it's time to maybe reevaluate the old hourly rate. And so I looked at it and I was like, okay, it's going to be $175. No, it's going to be $225. And then like, here's the thing. My hourly rate is now, if I'm on an individual session basis, not a full-blown like retainer where they're, ascertaining my services over a period of months, it's $250. Now it's reduced when I'm on a retainer business because obviously as a business owner, cash flow and the certainty of it, that's a different conversation. But for tried and true consulting and like one-off engagements, it's calculated on a rate of $250 an hour. And I remember this is one of those things where you try, you fail, you're like, does 125 sound good? And they say yes. And then you just get to a point where now I'm like, the hourly rate is $250.
Yeah. Take it or leave it.
Yeah. You will build that confidence by starting somewhere. And for me, within the span of a year, it more than doubled. And I got very comfortable. And I was talking about this with a fellow entrepreneur this morning. She and I were catching up and she said, I'm getting asked to speak a lot. And I'm like, what's your speaking rate? Because speaking engagements will be like, it is fabulous publicity. Like you're just going to come here. Your target audience is going to be there. It's great publicity. Now, if you're pitching on stage, quite another thing. Like if you're up there to do a tried and true pitch, you're at Tony Robbins conference and you have people and you have a product to pitch to them. Don't ask Tony Robbins for money. Like, flattered that he asked you to speak and like, pitch whatever you have to pitch. Watch Russell Brunson's The Perfect Webinar Secrets before you pitch from stage because this is gold. And then go like pitch your product and don't ask to get paid. But if you really are there keynoting or giving, your thought process or worksheet or running a workshop, you damn well better be getting paid. And it should not be this, like, you're going to get access to a great group of people. No, if you're not pitching, if you're not there to pitch another offering, you need to be able to do that. And that was another evolution for me too. When I started speaking, I was like, okay, I'm just elated and flattered. They would ask me to, okay, I'm running a business. Spending 4 hours speaking is taking me away from $1,000 I could be earning based off my hourly rate. So if you're asking me to talk and all in, I'm spending 4 hours, my minimum speaking is $1,000. And I'll never forget, I just threw it out there one time. They're like, we want you to speak. And I was like, great. My speaker's rate is $1,000. And I didn't even have like a speaker's clip or a speaker sheet or anything. And they're like, okay, sounds good. And I was like, damn it, I should have gone higher. But it was just like that like bold thing of, I'm just going to say what it is and throw it out there like a take it or leave it. And in some situations I have left it. Like they're like, no, I'm sorry, we really can't. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be happy to find you speakers who are just getting started and like really would benefit from this kind of a platform. And not in a like FU way, but like in a, you need to, if you're spending 4 hours speaking, you need to charge for that. And you need to just lay it down like you would with any other consultation.
Right.
This is the time I'm putting into it. This is the value I'm bringing.
And that comes from a high level of self-confidence, knowing that I know my stuff. Like I'm worth it. And I think so many people don't put a value on themselves that's high enough. Like they just tremendously undervalue who they are. And I want to say the older you get, the more you realize that, okay. Like I really, and it also comes from the knowledge, knowing that if you have an abundant mentality, not a scarce mentality, like, okay, well, here's what I charge. If you don't like it, I'll find somebody else. Like, no big deal. Like, I'm helping you as much as you're helping me.
Yeah.
Don't think you're doing me any favors here, you know?
Yes, the ability to say no is something that I still am working on every day. And I think sometimes you always will, but there is so much power in saying no, so you can give yourself the capacity to work with what are truly yeses. I was telling this to another marketing consultant who's just making the transition from job and side hustle to like full hustle. And she was like, this client, I don't know, like they're kind of running me around. And I was like, look, you need to just go in there with an abundant mentality and know who you are and the value that you provide, and just be like, look, in order for this to work, you need to take my guidance. That's what you're paying me for. Here's what I recommend. Here's what you are and are not doing. If that is not workable, if you cannot commit to your end of this, I don't think this is a good situation for either of us. And they ended up having the conversation, and the client like responded fantastically, and their relationship is now on another level. But it's that ability and okayness with being like, hey, like more of you where that came from, and like good fits too. Like I'm talking about freeing yourself up for those clients who you can't wait to talk to, who think everything you do for them is gold, who are appreciative, who you have a collaborative relationship with, who value you as a professional. Every client that you say no to that is not that just opens the door, again, the secret for saying, I will only take on this kind of client. All of my clients now, like they're people I would legit be friends with if they didn't pay me. And it's morphed to this like, and even the prospects that are drawn to me fit this profile of person. I was telling you this when I looked in my inbox with that personality calculator. It's like every single person in my inbox is an ID or a DI, and that's what I am. I'm a high ID on the DISC personality. And I know it's because I've said no to ones that are not.
Yeah, so they just don't fit. Like you'll sense that almost immediately. And you can and I'll tell it, I mean, for anybody that's just starting their entrepreneurial journey out there, the first time when you fire a client, it's one of the most liberating feelings that you'll ever have. I mean, I'm not saying to go out and just fire people for the sake of firing people, but when you get to the point where you truly understand that I'm the boss of my own company, like I don't have to say yes to you. Like,
yes, I
got into business for myself so that I can only work with people that I want to work with. That's why I did this. And it's a very liberating feeling when you can do that.
It's really hard because in the beginning, you're so flattered that people want to pay you money. You're so flattered, but that is again, where that gut instinct comes in. The only thing I've ever learned from working with a client who I should have said no to is that I should have said no to them. That is the only lesson I continue to get when you get those clients where you're like, everything is like, no, this isn't going to be a good fit. And they're like, I'll pay you. And you're like, okay, like, let's do it. And then I'm telling you, the only lesson you ever get from clients who you can feel that about right up front is that you should have said no to them. Not that, get profitability and then this or that. No, I'm sitting here telling you, and I know, John, you'll say the same thing. The only lesson, it'll continue to hit you over the head, and it still does these days, if I'm not conscious of that feeling and that listening, is, no, Kate, look at where you are. Look at this. Not workable. Who could have told you that?
And as you scale the business, it's the same thing with hiring people. Like when you make your first hire, it's almost like, holy crap, I can't believe that someone actually wants to work for me. Like I can't. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, this isn't like a privilege. Like this is a right. And if you don't like it here, then we're not. And you start to develop standards, and I'm terrible at that, by the way. I'm not terrible. It's one of my weaknesses. Let's just say that, because I don't slow down enough to actually take the time to think about things. I go pretty fast. But I can tell you that when you start to scale a business and hire people, you're just not a good fit for everybody. And there's never going to be a hire that you're going to make if you questioned it in the beginning, just like a client. If you were like, not sure about this one, you're going to regret it later. Like it's just, you're going to be like, I wish I would have not hired that person.
Yes. And also, and to that point, and I'll say this to people who are scaling their businesses, like find people who are complementary to you as well. Like I've come to realize I'm a visionary type of person. I'm a clouds, not a dirt. Like I'm just like, here it is, next big thing, execute, get it out there, put this online training up, let's go. That's why I love branding, like the brand concepts, like this is the brand. You guys build out like the development of the site, but do find teams that round you out. And one of the biggest hires and the best hires I made was getting a virtual assistant. And I really do consider her to be a part of my team. She knows my schedule probably more than I do. She could tell you what's happening in my life. and she literally schedules in time for me to, Kate, like unpack your apartment. I recently moved. Like stop trying to do all this stuff. Like unpack your freaking boxes. Like you're insane. She'll send me quotes too. It's so sweet. She sent me a quote the other day. It's like, remember, you don't have to do any of this. You get to do all of this. Cause she looked at my schedule and it was like one of those, was like from 7 a.m. to 8:30, like Kate was just booked. Mm-hmm. And she just like, she's such a like details. Remember, you're going to need 30 minutes in between this, create the agenda for this. Like she keeps me in check, but I've empowered her to do so as well. So that's an important lesson that you'll learn as scaling is like, what can I delegate? When is it worth it to invest in somebody taking off the small things so I can go on the larger scale things? Investing in virtual assistants, I didn't think I was ready for it financially. Now I have two. I could not tell you how I lived life without them.
And that's another hard part as someone goes through, they make the decision that they want to be in business for themselves. And then there's this it's kind of like a zone that sucks. It's like, okay, am I ready to hire somebody? And then you go through this phase like, well, everybody's going to suck compared to me. It's like we have these egos, and it's like, okay, well, no one can do it as good as I can. And then you get to the point where it's like, dude, everybody's better than I am at most of this stuff. Like, let me just stay in my little box and surround myself with people that tell me to stay in my box. Like, don't come over here, John, because you're going to screw this up.
When I was hiring my virtual assistant, I told her, I was like, listen, this is going to sound so ridiculous, but it needs to be said. I need to hire my mother, but I refuse to hire my mother. Okay. Like, because I feel like the last thing, I love my mother. We have a great relationship. She's my best friend. The last thing I want to do is put stress on that wonderful friendship we've cultivated by always talking business with her. Right. Like, but I needed that. I needed somebody who was so not afraid to be like, you're out. Down. Like, look at your schedule, get yourself in check. So when I hired her, I said, I need a corporate mom. I need you to be like, you're nuts. Like, how about these 12 things you haven't thought about, psycho?
Someone to basically put the brakes on, because you're trying to put the gas to the floor. And sometimes I need somebody that says, whoa, pause for a second. Like, you can't do that. And I'm like, yes, I can. No, because you haven't thought through these other 5 steps. Yes. Oh shit, you're right. I haven't thought through any of that.
Exactly. But I will say too, the biggest thing that made my VA successful, I developed systems. I spent a day before I went and hired them. Well, actually after I hired them, and I literally just documented on a Word document how Kate onboards a client, how Kate schedules meetings. Like, I literally almost observed myself for a day and just wrote down steps because I knew I was always going to be annoyed with them for not doing it the way I did it. But that's unfair if I never gave them the rules of the game. So we actually have a system at that point where like paid clients are booked in purple, discovery calls are booked in coral. They must fill out this questionnaire before they get time with Kate. They must pay their invoices. Here's the literal email message you send them welcoming them to working with me. And then send a DocuSign contract. Like, they're so systematic that it is great. And it's fantastic in a fantastic process, even as a solopreneur, kind of like I am, or a consultant, to do that, because even if you're not hiring VAs, you keep yourself consistent, which at the end of the day is such a relief.
And that's something for people that are just getting started out there. Documenting your journey. That's why that's so. I wish that I would have documented processes and systems as I was doing it. Because for me, it's very, very, trust me, it's very, very difficult to slow down enough to pause to say, okay, what did I do? How did I do that? Oh, I just wing it. Like I just come from the hip with everything.
Yeah.
It's not true, but that's what it seems like, but it's not true. It's because I've done it so many times, it becomes natural for me.
Yeah, it's habitual at that point.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just like, someone will ask me like, so what was your day like today? I don't even know what I did today. Like I could look at my calendar and tell you, but I have no idea. I just did me. Like I just need to get done. But I'm constantly moving. And so if you're just getting started out there, documenting your journey is so, so important, because then you can take that information and be like, oh, okay. Matter of fact, somebody else could then put that into a process or a system for you.
Yeah. Like I would say almost like one of the best activities you could probably do, hindsight's like, it would have been awesome, is like have somebody follow you around for a day and like be like, okay, now I'm booking a meeting, write this down. This is exactly what I'm doing. This is exactly what I'm doing. A discovery call is 30 minutes. Okay. That's why I'm booking it as 30 minutes. Like even the things you don't think about, like the length of the meeting. Is it Skype? Is it phone? Like just like I would almost pay somebody to follow me around for a week and just observe me and document. And then I would try and organize that into, okay, so here are Kate's systems and processes. And then you're like, oh, what's up? Like, I don't have to do any of this. Now somebody has.
And then you can scale. Then the sky becomes a limit as to how big you can scale, because you have something that can be duplicatable, replicatable, and easily scalable.
Yeah. The biggest point of contention I would assert with employers and employees is you never gave them the rules of the game. You didn't give them the systems. And then you get mad because you're like, why can't you just do it like I do it? And it's like, dude, I don't know how you do what you do, by the way.
I think I've heard that before, actually. Like, because, and I will tell you, like, and I'm still bad. I mean, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still bad at it because it took me a while to realize that not everybody thinks like I think. Like literally, as crazy as that sounds, it actually took me a while to think, well, I could figure that out. Why can't everybody else just figure that out? Like, how do you not understand what I understand?
Yes.
And it's bizarre. Like now I realize that not everybody's me. Not everybody acts the same way I do. Not everybody thinks the same way that I do. Not everybody interprets information the same way that I do. So now I try and pause for a second. I'm still not perfect, but I try and pause, because early on in my career, I would judge people based on that. Oh, they couldn't figure out as fast as me, therefore they must not be that good. And now I try and pause for a second to try and figure out, okay, what's their frame of reference? Where are they coming from? Maybe there's a reason why they're thinking the way that they're thinking, instead of just basing judgment so quick.
It's so true. Again, it goes back to like, if you're so out here with people, you're not in your own head. And like frustration is just misplaced expectation. We have this beautiful human ability to expect other people to see the world as we see, because we think we see the world without a certain colored glasses on, or like we think we see the world as it is. We do not see the world as it is. We see the world from the lens of our past experiences, our personality, and our brains filtering the myriad and infinity type of things and stimuli that are out there and condensing it into Kate's beautiful little version of life. And you're right. And it's so simple, but it's so hard to understand that like your view of the world, no matter how sure you are that that's reality, is not reality. It is not another person's reality. It is not reality. What you see, and this is another thing I love when tying back to science, literally translated into nerve impulses that make their way to your brain and are calculated. Understand that you are not a window to the world. You are a recorder, and your brain is processing information from what it's seeing out there. So when you take that into business, no, people are not going to think like you. And the only way to get flat with it is to get an agreement in place. And most oftentimes those agreements are with your employees systems. Like, here's the playbook. Let's coach to the playbook. Let's learn the playbook. Hey, if you can figure out how to innovate the playbook, do it better, smarter, faster, quicker, like, let's modify the system, but don't make the job centric around that individual because they figured out how to innovate it. Innovate the system to then allow somebody else to step into it.
Yeah, and I think it's almost as if sometimes you have to slow down to speed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because I'm like at that place. Well, I mean, I still go fast, but I have people around me. They're like, John, slow down, put some things in place. And I'm like, no, dude, nobody needs that crap. Like, they can just figure it out. Like, they just go, like, you know, we need people that will just like put their head through a wall. They'll just do it. And I'm slowly but surely trying to document some things. What I know though is once that is done, then any business it'll like a hockey stick. It'll just take off because now you have systems and processes in place that you can scale, hire, train people in the masses.
Yeah, it's, you know, my boyfriend says this about network marketing, but I really think it's applicable to a lot of businesses if you look at it from this way. I would rather make 1% off 100 people's effort versus than 100% of one person's effort. And that's the idea of network marketing, right? Like, that's how you roll up and get the passive income and that money where you're like, people actually make that money with network marketing. Yeah, because there's like, if you have 17,000 people in your downline, guess what? Like, heck yeah, you're making 1% of all of that. That's always going to outpace 100% of just you. Yep. How about that? So when you're building a traditional business, you know, i.e. not network marketing in this case, you're right. The more you can bring other people in and scale it, making 1% of 100 people is going to be more profitable than you just staying in your bubble. Only I can do this and making 100% off one. But the vehicle in which you get to having 100 people is systems. Like, you cannot scale without systems. It's always going to be systems. It's always going to be systems. Systems equals scale.
So it's funny. There's somebody sitting literally like almost right next to me right now that is like loving everything that you're saying. You're his best friend right now because I think for about 6 months, which is, you know, it's, and I'm thankful for that because have you read the book Rocket Fuel? It talks about a visionary and an integrator.
Yeah, no. And I've been told multiple times I should. I know which one mine is. Actually, one of my friends who has, this is maybe how you've come about it. She has a team under KW and they were like, hey, you need to read Rocket Fuel.
Yeah. And it talks about how you can have one for a business to truly, truly take off like a rocket. You can't just have a visionary type person. You've got to have somebody that's kind of driving it and pushing it and putting systems and processes in place. Because if I get caught up in my own head, I mean, I'm an idea machine. Like, I will come up with a bazillion different ideas and execute none of them a lot of times. But when you have that second person behind you, they can take that idea and say, okay, now let's run. And then not only will they say, let's run, but then they'll be on your back saying, okay, we need this, 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 and this. And I'm really thankful. Those types of people can sometimes be a pain in your behind because they're pulling me out of I just want to stay in John's world. Like, I just want to, you know, it's fun in my world. I like my head. And they pull me out of John's world and into the reality world. And that makes it go that much faster.
Yes. Yeah. They're my favorite kind of pauses and quote unquote pains. Like I need somebody again to shake me out of Kait's singular view of the world, which is, we'll create an online course and we're going to put this out and then we're going to do this. And like, hey, everybody, let's like run. And very much like you in that way. Like, I just love to create, and creation needs execution, and you need integrators to make that happen.
Yeah. So how do people get in touch with you? Wow, we're almost going on an hour and 45 minutes. And I apologize. I think I may have told you it was like an hour. So I'm sorry. I ramble, like I talk, and I just don't realize time to me.
The connectivity thing. You're in it, you're flowing, you're having great conversations. Like, that's another thing of that too. And that's the last thing I'll say before we go into the contact. you ever want to experience like true time distortion, have really great connections with people. If you think that you can't slow down life, I will tell you, and I feel that this is so true, the only way to slow down life is to get to that level of connection with people. And then you get to the end of your life and you're like, wow, it all went so fast. But if I look at it, like when you're so in the moment with somebody, when you're so out here with other people and not in there with yourself, time will expand itself so beautifully that you're like, God, the quality of my life is so great. Like it really, really, really is. So that's another thing, like everything in quantum physics and stuff, they advocate perception. You want to perceive having more time than you have. You want to just lose sense of time, which is such a freeing feeling. Get to that level of connectivity, be so out here and involved with other people and so curious about them that all of this shit that's happening in your head does not have room to talk about what time it is.
Hey, Steven, I know you're watching this. What she just said, make sure we quote, by the way. What you just said was brilliant, I think. And I've never thought about this until you just said it. Like, I didn't go into doing this podcast. I really had, actually, the whole reason to do that I started this podcast was to ultimately write a book. That was the real reason. The gift that I've received from this is what you just said. I'm meeting so many cool people that I don't know if it wasn't for me doing this podcast, I don't know if I would have met them because I would have been stuck in my own, like I'm being forced out of my world. Like I got to go out and meet new people all the time. And I'm a high I, so I like meeting people. But at the same time, I'm now forced to go out and talk to so many different people and the quality of my life. So I think everybody should start a podcast, by the way. It's if for no other reason, it's going to force you to go out and talk to a lot of amazing people. And you're learning, like my learning curve for things is exponential right now because the more people I talk to, the faster I'm processing information and the faster I'm learning things. Like it has been, I believe that I will look back 5 years from now and say, starting this podcast was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. I don't know why. I just believe that that's what will happen just through the relationships that I will make. And damn, I'm having fun.
Yeah.
How much better does it get than that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So much of our happiness is relying upon relationships and conversations. And if you really think about it, nothing can come into creation without a conversation. You can have the best idea in the world. It requires an audience. It requires a connection. It requires a conversation. And the beauty of that is, again, when you get to that level of connectivity and you're so present and with people, you get both things. You get to carry your idea forward and execute, and you get to just spend time and value time with other humans, which is, I really feel like you want to know why we're here. That is it. I mean, like, that is it. As humans, we are here to go through this journey together and to push each other forward and to learn about each other. And as a result, push the overall human experience and what that means and what's possible out of that forward. I
love that. That was beautiful. So how do people get in touch with you? Like if someone out there is watching and they wanted to engage your services, or if you had a group coaching program, like how would we find out about that?
Absolutely. So LeDonneBM.com is my web address, as in LeDonne Branding and Marketing, my name. Honestly, like I know the irony is that we're on Facebook and Facebook Live. I'm on an all LinkedIn diet. I am LinkedIn. Like if you want to connect, if you want to get to me, the quickest way possible is LinkedIn. And here's a little cheat secret I'll tell you from the LinkedIn course. The quickest way to get to anybody you think is inaccessible is through LinkedIn. They are used to people, Facebook, email, phone calls. I have gotten to authors, to people, to thought leaders, to journalists, to executives you would never think that you should be able to get to through LinkedIn. Okay, so you just picked up a client because prior to this podcast,
you looked up my LinkedIn, and I didn't even know we were going here. And I think I'm like, I'm not even that guy. Like, I'm not the person that I don't even know what my LinkedIn says. I should probably check it out, and it should probably be tweaked because I think I have one of those old photos that makes me look a little weird. But anyway, so I would love your input because I haven't touched LinkedIn. Matter of fact,
that's going nuts. You're missing out. There's a world of profitability on LinkedIn. You want to get to Tim Ferriss, you want to get to Tony Robbins, like give me 3 weeks in LinkedIn. I'll get to them faster than any other platform.
Oh, that's a deal. I so need to talk to you more about that because my LinkedIn looks like I'm some sort of weirdo. I am kind of strange, but anyway, so check you out on LinkedIn. That's how we engage with you. Do you have any courses that are coming up or anything that's coming up that people need to know about?
Yes. So the Influence Academy, I did the first one live. Here's the fun journey through launching an online course. I didn't even complete the course in the sense of like having all the curriculum developed. You know, I had this system that I taught to clients, but consulting is quite different than teaching, especially if you're teaching a group of people. So momentum favors action. I just put my hat over the wall. I developed a landing page by large. I knew like the lessons I was teaching because I taught them to clients, and I had 7 paid participants, which to me was complete market validation because I marketed it to a list of 300, 7 out of 300. I was like, I'll take that conversion rate. Wow. So I did the first live round of it. I actually led them through every week on a Zoom call with homework assignments. And now I've gotten all of the feedback. I've gotten their wins, and my team, my integrators are putting it into an evergreen format with live coaching sessions in between. So the next course that I'll be running to teach consultants, coaches, copywriters, speakers, anybody who is in that solopreneur way to get those types of results with LinkedIn. We're looking at a launch date of probably like 2 months out. And I'll be obviously doing a lot of build up and momentum around that. But until then, if you want one-on-one LinkedIn training, or even if you just want to talk to me about getting access to recordings of the course we could work something out while we develop the evergreen client portal. Definitely through LinkedIn, and the landing page is influenceacademy.live.
And Kate, we're going to put all of these, all of your contact information in the feed so people will find it, if that's okay with you. Awesome.
Yes, please.
All right, cool. And, we touched on this very early on about like fulfillment and the journey of fulfillment. And every single person I ask, what does fulfillment mean to them? So you're on the spot now, and that scary word fulfillment, what does that mean to you?
It's so interesting. I feel like as I've built the business and as I always defined fulfillment in business type of ways, or financial type of ways, because that's generally how you goal set when you have a business. And I did get to this point where I was quite buried with the business, and I realized I wasn't happy. It was one of those moments where you're like, why did I do this? Is this the thing? And fulfillment to me, as I've come to know, is really being able to create things and put things into existence, and being able to spend time with people who are interested and interesting, and having really, solid relationships in my life. So fulfillment is always learning new things, whether that's through traveling or diving into things like quantum physics that I had no intention of getting into, always creating new things and being empowered and inspired to create and really see that come to fruition. And then, building really great connections with people so I can have moments and experiences like I just had with you where, goodness, a world of knowledge and just so many things opened up for me in the last course of 2 hours. And how cool is it that can be my experience? And that is completely, completely fulfilling.
Yeah. And then we have the opportunity to share that with other people, which is pretty amazing. That experience that you described, I've told people before that money has diminishing marginal returns, meaning that every dollar I earn after a certain point means less and less and less. If I made 5 million to 6 million, it's $1 million, but it doesn't have a huge impact in someone's life. But I do remember a time, I had set income goals and I had hit one of those income goals. And I remember thinking to myself, is that it? Like not like, and it wasn't like one of those, I don't want to sound like a selfish person, but it was like, is this what life is going to be about? Like, if I add a couple extra zeros to this, does it really mean that much more? And then other experiences in my life, especially with my mom with the cancer, it really, really opened my eyes to like, there's just something more that's out there. And that's like, I wake up every day and it's like, okay, do I feel fulfilled? Am I on the right path? And if not, I'm going to be pretty quick to then shift directions because we don't know how much time we have. And that is really, really important to me to spend every day trying to be, if nothing more, just trying to be happy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So, and meet really cool people.
Yes. And hey, look, like if you look at your business from the lens of how many really great connections can I make and how can I make the biggest impact and drive the biggest value in their lives, the financial goals will take care of themselves time and time and time and time again in ways that you don't even realize nor expect.
Yep. 120%. I wish everyone took what you just said and just not internalize that. Like when you're doing what you feel is right, the money's going to, don't search for money. The money will seek you out when you're in that flow state, when you're just in that zone, which one of our guests called it the blackout zone. When you're in that blackout zone, like you just are so focused, time disappears, and you just know that you're in that state, like money will somehow find that zone. It'll be attracted to that for some reason.
Yes. Yes.
So that's awesome. I so appreciate you for doing this, especially because we had to reschedule. My brain is now going 1,000,000 miles an hour, so I probably won't be able to sleep tonight, which is usual for any time I do a show. And we're going to have you back again. As I told you before, we're building a podcast studio, and because you're somewhat local, you can be an actual live guest, which will be really, really awesome.
So excited. Thank you. I can't wait. I can have these conversations all the time. All the time.
I feel the same way. Thank you so much. We're going to have you again soon. And if there's anything that we can do for you, just feel free to reach out.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. I will see you soon for sure.
Thank you so much, Kate. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
All right.